In 1991, I went to my first lecture on brain SPECT imaging. SPECT is a nuclear medicine study that looks at blood flow and activity. It looks at how your brain works. SPECT was presented as a tool to help psychiatrists get more information to help their patients. In that one lecture, my two professional loves, medical imaging and psychiatry, came together and quite honestly revolutionized my life. Over the next 22 years, my colleagues and I would build the world's largest database of brain scans related to behavior on patients from 93 countries. SPECT basically tells us three things about the brain: good activity, too little, or too much. Here is a set of healthy SPECT scans. The image on the left shows the outside surface of the brain, and a healthy scan shows full, even, symmetrical activity. The color is not important, it's the shape that matters. In the image on the right, red equals the areas of high activity, and in a healthy brain, they're typically in the back part of the brain. Here is a healthy scan compared to someone who had 2 strokes. You can see the holes of activity. Here's what Alzheimer's looks like, where the back half of the brain is deteriorating. Did you know that Alzheimer's disease actually starts in the brain 30 to 50 years before you have any symptoms? Our imaging work also taught us that mild traumatic brain injury was a major cause of psychiatric illness that ruined people's lives, and virtually no one knew about it because they would see psychiatrists for things like temper problems, anxiety, depression, and insomnia, and they would never look, so they would never know. Here's a scan of a 15-year-old boy who fell down a flight of stairs at the age of 3. And even though he was unconscious for only a few minutes, there was nothing mild about the enduring effect that injury had on this boy's life. When I met him at the age of 15, he had just been kicked out of his 3rd residential treatment program for violence. He needed a brain rehabilitation program, not just more medication thrown at him in the dark or behavior therapy, which, if you think about it, is really cruel. To put him on a behavior therapy program when behavior is really an expression of the problem, it's not the problem. Researchers have found that undiagnosed brain injuries are a major cause of homelessness, drug and alcohol abuse, depression, panic attacks, ADHD, and suicide. We are in for a pending disaster with the hundreds of thousands of soldiers coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan, and virtually no one is looking at the function of their brain. Here is the scan of a teenage girl who has ADHD, who is cutting herself, failing in school, and fighting with her parents. When we improved her brain, she went from D's and F's to A's and B's and was much more emotionally stable. Here's a scan of Nancy. Nancy had been diagnosed with dementia, and her doctor told her husband that he should find a home for her because within a year she would not know his name. But on an intensive brain rehabilitation program, Nancy's brain was better, as was her memory. And 4 years later, Nancy still knows her husband's name. Or my favorite story to illustrate this point is Andrew, a 9-year-old boy who attacked a little girl on the baseball field for no particular reason, and at the time was drawing pictures of himself hanging from a tree and shooting other children. Andrew was Columbine, Aurora, and Sandy Hook waiting to happen. Most psychiatrists would have medicated Andrew as they did Eric Harris and the other mass shooters before they committed their awful crimes. But SPECT imaging taught me that I had to look at his brain and not throw darts in the dark at him to understand what he needed. His SPECT scan showed a cyst the size of a golf ball occupying the space of his left temporal lobe. No amount of medication or therapy would have helped Andrew. When the cyst was removed, his behavior completely went back to normal, and he became the sweet, loving boy he always wanted to be. Now, 18 years later, Andrew, who is my nephew, owns his own home, is employed, and pays taxes. Because someone bothered to look at his brain. He has been a better son and will be a better husband, father, and grandfather. When you have the privilege of changing someone's brain, you not only change his or her life, you have the opportunity to change generations to come. I'm Dr. Daniel Amen. Thank you.